But I open the floor up to anyone who wants to discuss anything involving Reparations Saturdays, ladies and gentlemen. This is Reparations Saturdays. Welcome again to our weekly podcast. This podcast, of course, speaks directly to reparations here in High Point. We have recently gotten a resolution to pass with the High Point City Council to establish a commission to study reparations. Now, this comes in pieces. Right now, we do have the first piece, which is establishing the actual selection committee who will put together the commission. So that's the first, I think, victory that we've gotten. No, the first was actually going to city council with it. We actually, stood up and said it's time to take notice. We got to get our things. But I see Courtney's come on, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. So again, welcome everybody. Good morning. We are here at Reparations Saturday. Again, this is a podcast that's put on by the High Point NAACP and brought to you by the good folks at Flex the Vote. Again, I want to welcome our panel back. We've got Miss Courtney in with us this morning. That's our local, how can we say? She is the highly driven young lady, member of the NAACP. She brings a lot of great ideas to our panel. Want to welcome her. There she is. Morning, Courtney.
Howdy.
We also have Jason Hicks. Jason is with us today. He is a local community advocate. He is always involved in something that involves social justice. So Jason Hicks joins us as well. We've got from Flex the Vote, Mr. Ken Watts. He is our how can I say it? Educational historian. He's got great facts. He loves to impress upon us the need to read. So Ken, welcome this morning.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And of course, my co-host today, the lovely Miss Brittany Chisholm. She comes to us from High Point, graduate of High Point Andrews, T. Wingate Andrews High School.
Yes.
Okay. And also a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University. So Brittany, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. We ready for an exciting day today?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, Reparations Saturdays would like to introduce our guest speaker today. She comes to us from High Point. She is a principal and highly driven branding guru. Her company is named the Dynamic Images International, and she's here to give us some insight again into reparations, what this thing is going to look like, and some things we can take away today that can help us move this peg forward. So again, Miss Elma Harrison, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rob. Hey, Courtney, how are you? I am delighted to be here on this wonderful Saturday morning. Are you ready for me to get started?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're kind of informal. So today I was going to kind of give you the show. You gave us a little bit before we came on, ladies and gentlemen. So Elma, I'm gonna let you have it. Take it away.
Okay. Basically, I am delighted to be here with you today, and so wonderful and appropriate that we have allowed these Saturdays to be Reparation Saturdays. And I was speaking before that we as a people must control the narrative as to how people think, say, and feel about us. And this opportunity gives us a great venue to be able to formulate in the minds of our publics as to what we want to be said, learned, and internalized about reparations. Let me just share with you a couple things. Let me share with my story. Let me share my story with you first. I graduated from Ragsdale High School, and I found out that as I graduated, one of my professors, one of my teachers told me that, Elma, you won 10th grade homecoming court, but we didn't give it to you because you were Black, and we had never had a Black girl on homecoming court. She said, I had to make you aware of this before you graduated high school. I said, well, thank you. Secondarily to that, our counselor in high school had a tendency to track the Black students to technical school or trade school, and the white students to four-year institutions. What that says to me that I was too young to realize it was the first introduction to racism that I received as a young person. You see, here's the thing. I asked the question, I posed the hypothesis, is racism so American? When we protest racism, people think we're protesting America. I can't take credit for that. That comes from Michael Eric Dyson's book on entertaining Black. I simply say that in that story, it's time to break down the barriers. It's time to bring to the awareness of white America and of Black America that for over 244 years, High Point and this country has leveled injustice, cruelty, brutality, inhumanity, slavery, and legal segregation. This stuff must be brought to bear. In our history, we've glamorized slavery. We said we went through slavery. Let's talk about what slavery really is. Slavery is murder, rape, sodomy, crimes against nature, and assault against educational, financial, and economic sustainability. Let's just call it what it is, okay? Dr. Martin Luther King speaks to the fact that supremacy causes people to feel like that they know it all, that they understand it all. They cannot open their minds to see that this really happened. And somebody has got to take responsibility for it. Who bears the responsibility? The descendants of the perpetrators who must give us a formal apology. And that apology is not only in words. That apology is in words, actions, and deeds. Who are the recipients? The recipients are the descendants against whom these atrocities were leveled, must receive restitution. Now, we have a reparation issue that's going on, and I don't want to confuse the issue. We have a reparation issue that's going on with the federal government, which will definitely be some level of monetary restitution. But we here on the local level must work within the boundaries of what we have to make sure that African Americans in High Point receive their just due because of the disparity that's occurred over time. Let me simply say this. I left in 1978. North Carolina was in pretty good shape during that time. I come back home. The schools are more segregated than they were when I left. The educational opportunities for our young people have declined because we have fallen victim to others controlling our narrative. Okay, you see, also Michael Eric Dyson says that if we don't control our narrative, we will be left out in the cold. See, Black life is tolerated as long as it's at the will of white folks. But we got to control our own narrative. That's why we've got to take this information that we have and begin to disseminate it. See, it's kind of like going through the marketing funnel. You have to go from awareness to advocacy, and there are some things in between that you must do to appeal to the hearts and minds of folks to help them become loyal to your cause and actually execute your cause. So some of the things that we must look at in deciding what this custom designed reparations restitution is about in High Point. We must look at housing. We must look at elimination of food deserts. We must look at education. We must look at equal opportunity in contracting with the city. We must look at access to healthcare. We must look at investment in Black communities, and we must look at equity in treatment as it relates to policing. The thing that we don't want this to turn into is social programs. They call it affirmative action. You all know that with the black lady that Biden is appointing to the Supreme Court, folks are trying to call that affirmative action. They're trying to say the persons aren't qualified. Yes, they are qualified because they're already on the bid. So let me clear that right now. Okay. So therefore, how do we determine this restitution and how do we bring closure? That is the charge of the commission, to determine what that looks like. And I'm on the committee that is looking toward pulling together the individuals that will be selecting the folks that's going to be able to be on the commission to really research, assess the history of High Point. There's a lot of data out there that's going to have to come together. Those commission sessions aren't going to be sessions for you talking about this happened. Those commission sessions are going to have to be sessions where you bring data to be able to put together the story that's going to be presented to City Council in the final analysis, so that we can prove the hypothesis that we have set out to achieve. Does that kind of sum it up in a nutshell? Now you can throw some questions at me if you like, or I can just keep on talking, because this is what I do.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I mean, group, we have to give her a hand on that one because she has left some very delectable subjects on the table. I mean, I'd like to open it up to the floor because, you know, our group, this is what we do. And, you know, Reparations Saturdays is in full swing. So I'm going to open up the floor real quick. Let's start with Courtney. Courtney, do you have any questions that you want to ask Ms. Hairston?
Well, Jason had his hand up, so I'll give him that first, and then
Okay, I think he was clapping.
Yeah, I was clapping. I was
Okay.
applauding what she said.
Okay.
okay. I think it's wonderful all that you said, Elma, and thank you so much for sharing your story. That is deeply rooted, and it seems very interesting how we all can share stories as like Elma's story, because we've all had experiences, many of us at young ages, with just that innocence of the school system, and how our school system is a lot of times a child's introduction, as Elma said, to racism. And it's unfortunate that we are so segregated within our school systems, but segregation really never happened. We integrated ourselves into little pieces of their schools, but they've never put themselves into our schools. Our schools were closed, you know, during those times. Our teachers lost their jobs, our principals, our great educators, you know. So Elma brought up a lot of history that I don't think people 100% pay attention to, of our introduction into. My son, I can take him for instance, this year, he was 15, he just turned 16, but this year was his first time of his introduction truly to a one-on-one experience of being called a nigga on the basketball court and pushed around. So, you know, these are experiences that we experience within our schools. So it tells us a lot of times, why are we still in these schools? So when we're asking for something, we need to be asking for more freedom schools. We need to be asking for more schools, educators that look like us, that we can, you know, be in classrooms to learn our history, as Elma spoke of. to be able to have a teacher that deep dives into Africana studies, to connect us beyond the slave ship, to truly beyond the water, to where we originally came from and what our culture truly is. So Elma hit on so many points. So thank you, Elma.
You know, let me say something to you, Courtney. What we must do, we must teach our children how to handle the N-word. You see, in my training of kids in Denver, and by the way, if y'all kind of want to know what I did and what I've been, all this stuff is behind me, Google me in the Denver Post, archives of the Denver Post, Google me in the Denver Urban Spectrum, Google me in the Body of Christ. I've got stuff written all over the place. You'll see some of the stuff that I've done and some of the activities that I encountered prior to coming back to High Point. But let me say this, what my mama and daddy did. And my mom and daddy were not educators. They were great parents. My daddy had a 6th grade education and my mama had a high school education, but my mother was a teacher at heart. See, she taught us our history.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't leave it up to the schools to teach us. So we got to teach our children, number one, how to combat the N-word. I've never been called the N-word, by the way. I'll say that. Never. And I'm ready when I'm called the N-word. Okay. And I will teach your children what to say. That's the first thing we got to do. The second thing we got to do, we got to re-educate white America as to what our value proposition is. Now, whenever I talk to Rob about defining our narrative and using those words that define me, I'm going to teach you how to talk to me. That's in my what did you get stopped by a cop program that I did out in Colorado with the Denver Police Department. We taught our children how to talk to police and police how to talk to our children. There are 250 children somewhere in the country between 2009 and 2010 know what to say and how to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the impact we have to make. But as I say, first of all, if I were helping my child define who they are, and you have to teach your children the history for them to know this. Mm-hmm. You call me an N-word. First of all, I'm going to describe what an N-word is, and the N-word is you.
It's you.
N-word is not a person. N-word is a pronoun that describes the actions of a person. Mm-hmm. So that's first of all what it is. And you know what? If that's true, the watch you're wearing on your arm was invented by a Black man. Mm-hmm. The stuff that the ironing board and the iron that you iron your clothes with was invented by a Black man.
The GPS that you navigate
the GPS, the windshield
around.
wiper. See, we gotta teach our children how to combat these things.
The mask.
All of it, break it down.
Everything.
First of all, if you ever working with children, you direct them to a place on the website called, write this down if you will. What would America be without Black people?
Okay, now
what
on
would
that
America
note,
be without Black people? On that piece, it tells you every invention that was made by a Black person. And you know what? Everything you use, from the chair you sit on to the windshield wipers that wipes the water off your windshield, to the air conditioner,
to the maxi pad for the lady.
wait,
Tell
okay,
me
now,
about
time out. Hold on, wait a minute. Now we can't go maxi pad on the show. Can't do that.
We
I
can't,
love y'all. I love y'all.
that we didn't get
But wait.
credit for. Yeah,
See,
Rob, people need to know all inventions. Okay.
But see, all right, but see,
Our
we're getting
cover
off
crops.
subject. All right,
okay, okay, Rob.
Let's...
Lastly, back to where we were with Whitney.
Okay.
Courtney. All I'm saying is, it is our responsibility. We cannot. I just wrote a piece on critical, cultural relevant teaching, CRT, cultural responsible teaching. I just read an article on that this morning. Okay, response to a really good article that came out. If you want to find some good articles, go to medium.com. A lot of my stuff is on there. It's going to be on there.
What is
but
it?
The
Medium?
bottom line is, Rob, we can't leave to chance our brand, somebody else telling us who we are. We can't leave to chance our children being educated by somebody who's not giving them the whole story. Instead of trying to change their way of life, let's create our own. all the sororities and fraternities in Colorado, Divine Nine. That's where that 200 and some odd kids came from. All of us have youth groups. And my pastor would let us use my church in Denver. He would provide the food, he provided it all, didn't charge us a thing because he was interested in kids learning etiquette and police etiquette and all this stuff, okay? That's where we train these children. That's where we taught them how to stand up and present, okay? That's how we hone their communication skills. They didn't learn that in school.
Okay, now right there. I want to pause there for a minute because there are some questions I know that we want to get in.
Okay,
And
go for
I
it.
have one question that I want to speak to about the education piece. And just to drill down more into what that will look like for reparations for High Point. Because as you speak education, I listened to what you said in terms of teaching others how to speak to me and knowing how to respond when some people say the N word. While I agree that's a great concept, I think in High Point that may not work because that may not be the perspective that kids nowadays see what that word means. Let's
We
go
gotta
through.
train them. There's no
I
way.
understand, but
This is Rob. This stuff is not gonna happen in a vacuum,
oh,
and
no
it's not
problem.
gonna happen immediately.
Yeah, no. But hold on, let me give you the question
Go for
because
it.
I feel you're ready. So, what does reparations in High Point look like when it comes to education? And define what education looks like, because I'm thinking school and you may be thinking neighborhood community education, but how can reparations look like in High Point on that education piece?
See, it's got to be a dual. We got to use a dual mechanism here. We got to use the school and the community working together.
There are layers to it.
If there are
Yeah.
layers, as Courtney says, there's layers to it. Yes, like Courtney said, we've got to have African-American teachers being role models for our children. And let me tell you what I'm talking about that. Teaching is a very professional profession. We can't have teachers standing up in front of kids modeling behaviors and a professional image that's not consistent with teaching. Okay? We want to put the most positive images in front of our children to model how reality looks. So that's the first thing that's got to happen.
And that's
African-American teachers teaching our children, modeling professionalism before our children. Okay, not going to school looking like the children, going to school demanding respect because they are positioning and posturing themselves for professionalism. And you know what else happened? We went to remote learning without modeling what excellence in remote learning was to our children.
Okay, now, Ms. Harrison.
I'm gonna pencil that thought because I'm gonna come back to it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So exactly how does reparations address that? Because I hear what you're saying. That's a concept, but how do we get the city of High Point to give us something on the monetary level that says we're going to improve the image of our teachers?
You know what? The city of High Point may not be able to do that alone.
No, that's not an ask. That's a community ask. That's community.
See, again, Rob, we cannot expect for this to be done in a vacuum. There has got to be a multiplicity of actions taking place, monetary, commitment from parents, commitment from community, commitment from the school system, commitment from the city of High Point. No one person or one entity can make this thing happen. And that's why we're going to need the reparations effort at the center of all of this. Yes. We are the catalyst. We are the catalyst that brings this to fore. And we must put a plan together. We must put a plan together that says, these are the actions of this group. These are the actions of that group. This is the actions of the community. And collectively through this effort, we will reach the ultimate, which is what you're describing as the reparations of education, the reparations of equal opportunity in contracting. Say, for example,
okay, hold on. Maybe hold that thought. Jason, okay. I know you got a question. Go for it.
Okay.
Well, kind of a question statement combined is, I last or 2 weeks ago rather, I was just having a similar conversation in regards to education with what I would say leaders in the city. It was a conversation amongst the CAC and what does education look like in the city of High Point.
What's CAC,
Um,
Jason?
uh, Citizens Advisory Council.
Okay.
And we were having a conversation with them, CAC and the Healthy High Point Foundation, along with UNCG.
Mhm.
So we had that conversation, and education got brought up from a health standpoint. And one thing that I always point out on the education piece, because I've seen it, because I've got or I have two friends that are educators, is that there's a issue with, and I say this as a white male, there's an issue with white teachers not having cultural understanding when dealing with Black students, and then you end up these students end up out of the school, you know, in school suspension or what have you, which leads to disparities in education, all because of a cultural understanding or lack of cultural understanding. So what a white teacher may see as misbehavior is not a lot of times. But what I'm getting to more specifically in regards to reparations is that my personal thing is I fear that I would fear including this, having the city involved in the education piece on the reparations, because I don't want it to end up being about scholarships personally.
Amen.
That's just my personal point, because that goes back to programs kind of thing. And that's not adequate. And I know we're not really talking about what the commission's going to do, but I just want to be vocal on that, because I don't want someone else to see this and think that a scholarship and just a couple $1,000s here or there in funding for African American community at High Point in the form of a scholarship is adequate in terms of reparations.
Jason, I
Great
wholeheartedly
point.
agree with you. That's why we have got to
Great
become
point.
the authors and the architect of what reparations is not. When I just chronicle that information to you, that is starting. We are in the awareness phase now, and we got to get into the advocacy phase. Okay. And all of that in between is what you just talked about. And based on developing what goes in the middle is us becoming the authors of what reparations is not. That there lies the platform for you to educate people. Remember, I said this is about educating people to our narrative. It is about educating people what reparations is not. And that there lies a platform. There lies an audience for you to communicate that scholarships just isn't enough. Scholarships is not a part of this. Does that kind of bring a little bit more leverage to what this is, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, most
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. All I was gonna say is, I understand completely what you're saying. I agree with all that. I just wanted to say out loud that reparations are not enough, I'm sorry, scholarships are not enough for reparations. But a couple conversations back on this podcast, we were talking about, my feelings is that a lot of the disparities that we see today in generational wealth and other things are from education or lack of education at some point. However, it's too late to correct that with a scholarship, or too late to correct that just with education, because there's such a gap now.
Agree.
Well, let me say this.
Multiplicity of stuff. Rob, let me just say this one minute. It is a multiplicity of stuff. See, when you go back to the wealth, you go back to when the indentured servants and the slaves came over, and our country was offering land, Head Start program, land and it offered land to white settlers that could get over here and take on that land, you know, and they didn't give Black people, and then even the indentured servants could work 7 years, and then they would be, you know, they say white slaves came over too. Yeah, they came over, but they were indentured servants, and they served, worked their time off and got their free land. You see, land is money. And even when our soldiers came back from World War II, they couldn't even have home ownership. That's where the FHA and that's where the FHA lending and what have you came through the federal government. But the federal government perpetrated racism by redlining. You know, they redlined ghetto areas, and the blue areas were the good areas, and the yellow areas were the mediocre areas. So the first thing we talk about is the stealing of wealth from us.
The real
Having us
Okay.
work.
Okay, wait, because now we're getting off education because
Okay,
I have a
but
very,
what
I
I'm
have a
saying is he
question.
talked education, but it's all connected, Rob.
Oh, no doubt. But that's why we're going to stay on point with the topic first, because I think
Okay, we'll stay
education is
on
a
point.
piece where I want to ask this of the entire group. And then I need to pass the mic over to Brittany because she did have a question. But do we take scholarship if they offer them? Brittany, go for it.
crumbs, Brittany, no.
But no, don't answer that question. I mean, I want the group to
Crumbs.
think about that.
Okay.
Brittany
Ain't
had a
taking
prior
crumbs, Rob. We
question.
ain't at the foot at the table. We ain't at the foot. We taking
I
over
got
the
you.
table.
I got you. Brittany, you had a question.
I
Go
have
ahead and
two
ask that
questions,
question.
and
And
they
we're
go
going to
in
come back
two
to that.
different directions. So if I'm getting on topic, just stop me there, okay? So my first one is, it's kind of like a statement and a question in the end. So the first one is, during our last discussion, Ms. Courtney had stated how pivotal it is to reach out to other cities within North Carolina to gain a better understanding of how their tactics of what they did into receiving reparations. So we're going to take Asheboro. So when I researched Asheboro's article, I received that they were giving budgetary and programmatic priorities versus giving compensation and reparations. So my question would be is, how can we politically fight to earn both compensation and address issues that are systematic in our nature? Yes, we want our compensation, but as Ms. Elma Harrison has stated, we also want to educate them. We also want to put different things in place. So that's the first question, is how can we politically fight to earn both? We want the scholarships, yes. We want the education. We want these programs where we are able to own land. How can we do this, as well as letting them know we want our funds as well, and we want these programs in place to help us to, you know, break out of this systematic racism that they have given to us for centuries?
Well, from the standpoint of politically coming together, as I said earlier on, there is a very, very aggressive effort in Washington, D.C. right now. And if you keep your eyes peeled on what's happening there, they've got so many things going on. I don't know if they'll ever get to resolve this. That is actually talking about monetary restitution for reparations. Now, those reparations can come in the form of tax breaks. They gave a tax break to the wealthy. Why can't they give us tax breaks so we can get refunds every year until we're paid? You know, I'm just throwing that out there. But on a local basis, when you look at what's happened in Asheboro, they just dropped. Is it Asheville, did you say?
Asheboro.
Asheboro.
Yes, ma'am.
They've just dropped the ball on that. The last thing I heard, that they weren't picking up the ball. Let me share with y'all one thing that I'll bring to the group, to the organization, whenever I get the final analysis. I am serving on the Build Back Biden Better Steering Committee, American Rescue Plan. Now, there is a document that I will send you all that shows what North Carolina as a state is getting, and it is massive. But what our piece is strengthening the small Black business infrastructure. If Black businesses had received the level of funding that white businesses have received over the last 10 years, and this comes from the Secretary of State, we would put $1 billion worth of revenue into the system and 8,000 jobs. So that lets you know that pulls some leverage into the disparity. There's going to be $6 million that is going to be allotted, hopefully, and 1 million of that is going to go toward fostering or tooling the Black business ecosystem. And it is phenomenal that those of us who are sitting at the table, namely me, they try to get, sometimes they get a little bit off message because they revert back to hiring the people they're comfortable with for jobs. And I'm saying, how are you going to get comfortable with other people if you don't give them an opportunity to see that they have excellence too? So there is one way that's not considered reparation or whatever. That's just considered responsibility on the part of this state to do right by Black businesses and acknowledging the fact that they haven't done right by Black businesses. And the pandemic has made it even worse. So that's just an example of one thing that can occur, which is much, much, much needed. But the bottom line is we have to become, as we are becoming, advocates for our own cause, knowing that we will, in some way, shape, or form, get monetary compensation. But here on this level, we have to deal with where we are and meet these folks where they are and communicate to them, this is what we need, and how do we work together to make it happen? And that hopefully will come out in the discussions as it relates to the commission.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
You want to get back on education, Rob?
Oh, no. I'm ready for part 3.
Okay.
Part 2 was great. Does anyone
I
else
was gonna
have
say,
any
I got-
questions? I'm sorry. Let me open up the floor. to
There's
questions.
Ken's hand is up.
Ken, it's on you, Captain.
Oh, okay. No, I just thought that was a good point about the marriage of I guess I would call it, I wouldn't call it programs, but I would call it policy change with the compensation part. And I guess I was just, I think one of my fears, and I was wondering how you would address it, is how do you separate, what we're due as tax-paying citizens, regardless of whether or not, reparations are being enacted, with what's actually compensatory justice. So, I think every tax-paying citizen of a city, is due, a baseline level of service in exchange for those, for being a citizen. You have rights as a citizen to, feel safe and, and be protected and, general services, versus what's actually compensatory. And for me, that looks like, above and beyond to rectify past wrongs versus, just saying, okay, well, we're going to do the right thing from now on.
No, we
Like,
can't
I just wonder how you separate that.
I don't really know if there is a separation per se, because bottom line is, I said earlier, we have to meet people where they are. If there's money in the coffers is one thing, but if there's not money in the coffers, it's another thing. So how do you work within the boundaries of which you have? And hopefully the commission will come up with some strategies for that. But keep in mind that I feel wholeheartedly, if you keep track of what is happening in Washington with HR, I can't remember the name of the bill, Charles Hensley put it out. Yeah, HR 40. If you keep track of what's happening to that, there's some silence right now, yes. But if you look at that bill, and if that bill can get passed, if we can ever get people to vote and get majority in Senate and House of Representatives, you ever get the Democrats to start singing from the same song sheet, and I said the Democrats, even when the Republicans are wrong, they still sing from the same song sheet. But the bottom line is, if you can get some of the some of the pieces that's under that legislation, dollars, read the document, dollars, we're talking about dollars to American descendants of slaves, not scholarships, not any of that stuff. So with them working on the federal level and us doing what we can locally on this level and working within the parameters that we can work within to bring some equity and shut down some of the disparity that's going on. That to me spells success. Now, how we do that, we have a strategy for, we'll develop a strategy for doing that by opening up the gates, the floodgates of what needs to be put on the table to consider. And hopefully that piece will be achieved by the commission. After that's out there, who's to say the direction we're going to go? But at least it's going to be out there for and inform data to hopefully make an informed decision.
Excellent. Courtney, I
Okay.
think you have a question.
One of them was HR 40. That one's been on the table, what, 20 years, Elma?
And they've just
So-
started, it's just resurged.
Okay, so let's pay attention to that. They kick it down, and Biden has said he is not addressing HR 40. So he has been very clear.
We have got to get out there and change the landscape.
I think, what about this though? I think since HR 40 has been kicked out so many times, I think we need to be speaking about we need to create a new bill to try to get passed.
What?
Because HR 40 has a stink on it. It's not, the Democrats don't want it, the Republicans don't want it. Nobody white want it, period.
Well, then the Black Caucus should come up with a different,
There you go.
the Black Caucus should come up with a different series of events.
Right.
a
You do
different
something over and
strategy.
over. What is it called when you do something over and over and it doesn't work? It's called
Insane.
insanity.
There
Insane.
you go. Insane.
Now we
real
never
quick.
going to get nothing with that. I have one more, Rob.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Taxes. When we talked about taxes earlier, I'm backtracking. I took a couple of little drop downs, but taxes. When we spoke about a reduction on our taxes, okay. Well, I had sent Ken something a long time ago, several months ago, about Dorothy A. Brown. And Dorothy A. Brown is I don't know if she is a professor or she's an expert in the research of taxes. And we, in our community, Blacks are taxed double, especially when we're jointed in marriage, than any other group there is. So we're already getting bamboozled on our taxes. And it comes down to, okay, so when we talk about our land taxes, we pay taxes on our land. Well, we pay a much more amount because we have less land. We didn't receive land grants. We don't have 20 acres, 100 acres, so therefore we're taxed more because we have less. So we need to really consider, one of the things, this may sound crazy to some, but one of the things is we should not be taxed. If we need a card, the government needs to issue us a card. And when it says tax exempt, that means you don't pay taxes. And that don't mean I don't pay taxes. That means 3 to 5, 6 generations from now has that same card. It's like a Social Security card. You don't pay taxes. The government gonna pay you back any means necessary is the way we need to approach this. By any means necessary, they can come up with a plan. And we just have to give them streamlines to come up with the plan.
And Whitney, when you talk about government, you got to hold, look, let me say this. We got to hold our representatives' feet to the fire.
To the fire.
Okay, we got to hold our representatives' feet to the fire. See, the government can't do anything without the representation of the people. And the people, the people, in other words, when they got this thing gerrymandered, politicians pick their people, the people don't pick the politicians. But the bottom line is we have got, when Black folks get into politics, we as Black folks and as an advocacy group that we are, the NAACP must collectively hold our politicians' feet to the fire on issues like you're talking about. Bring those issues up on the floor so that legislation can be passed that protect and foster what you're talking about, Courtney. It cannot happen without legislatures taking on our cause. And the only way you can have legislatures take on our cause, we as how many members is it in the NAACP? What, 600,000 or 1 million members? You tell me if we come together as an organization and everybody write their congressman and their senator, and a million people do that. Don't you think that is going to make a difference? Because people react to numbers, not one or two people. I'm talking about collectively.
There's a key in that you just said, though, that while we can't come together, the national level doesn't even support reparations. So when you have our national that doesn't support it, how are we going to come together 600,000 people? We're not even on the same accord.
We
You know,
just keep
so-
on trucking to the extent that we can.
We need to hold them accountable nationally. I'm just going to say
Of
that.
course, of course.
Purple. Because if we're a small entity, like I say, we're the feet, they're the head. How are we going to direct what the mind is telling? It's impossible. So we're going against each other in our own organization. Everyone needs to be supportive of reparations and the advancement of colored people in our organization.
I have to give national credit where credit is due. They are trying. With all the education they're sending down, our messaging on critical race theory was excellent. Internal management, excellent. So they are trying.
What about
And I'm going to give them,
What about reparations?
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They are behind the curve, but I believe we can look. There is something called bottom up. Okay, there's something called bottom up. If enough of us begin to make traction on the bottom level, national cannot help but embrace what the locals are doing. And we here in High Point are taking the lead in that. It may not happen tomorrow, because I know we get anxious and we want it to happen now. But if enough of these local levels, Chicago, they're doing some things. Oklahoma, they're doing some things. High Point is doing some things. Okay, California is doing some things. If enough of these grassroots local foundational efforts start, the NAACP national can't help but
to jump on board.
They would be foolish not to jump on board as an organization. So we got to we got to light the fire here.
Yeah. But see, I think what Courtney's trying to say is, why should we have to do that when it should be the priority of the NAACP to make that happen?
Advancement of colored people,
baby.
Yeah, and just
we are
and
the advancement of people of color. Think about
here we go. And now I just want to point out one thing: if no one, on the podcast today knows what HR 40 is, this was a commission to study reparations on a federal level. And so just wanted to point that out to Courtney's comment there. Then I also want to point out the part about the tax exempt card. Now I think that's a great idea, Courtney, because to Ken's point, we're talking about compensatory reparations as opposed to what we do as a community. But now I want to get into that because I think that's a great topic when we're talking reparations here in this city. I want to go back to our co-host today, Miss Brittany, because I think she had a question. I want to make sure we got that in. Brittany? She's, I think, coming.
Apologize, everyone. I have a little toddler here. I have to use the potty. I'm sorry. Just going back into, I think my question is a little off topic, but I think why I feel in my spirit why Biden is not trying to address HR 40, simply because, and the same thing with our governor of our mayor, of High Point, Jay Wagner. I think the language is making them feel uncomfortable. It's like a reminder of the dark history. So my question would be what are some strategies that we could collectively create to better facilitate a positive message that will bring more recognition and passion and understanding to the Caucasian community for them to be willing to help us get through this? I mean, I don't know, like y'all are saying, like they're not trying to pass it off, but how can we help them to understand that is equally important? I mean, the Native Americans have received their reparations. The Jewish community have received museums and all kinds of things in that nation. But with us, it's like they just keep sweeping us under the rug time and time again. So going back to Miss Courtney, Miss Elma, how could we all come together as a nation to push this agenda?
I think it's all about the numbers. Excuse me, Elma. I think it's all about showing people when you are shaken to the core to know that the average Black family has less than $2,000, and that's really a generation of somebody like your grandmother that has pensions. We have a lot more of that than anything else. When we realize that they have 10 times more than we have, 171 average, the household, a high school graduate has more more money, more experience, or more opportunities than the PhD doctor. So when we realize that education is not even catapulting us, when we realize that there are more immigrant doctors in our places than there are African descendants of slaves in medical schools, how we're denied, how we don't own any industry. If we expose things like that on a national level, on a world level, that out of 11,000 aggregating processing facilities just in our triad area, there are only 200 Blacks. And I don't even believe they're Black. I think they're of immigrant and all kind of things. So when we start telling people true data, I think that has a bigger effect on people. And they'll say, oh, you know, Black people, we're prideful. I say it all the time. Nobody really wants to say they don't have $2,000. You know, that's embarrassing. But we have to put ourselves out there, show what our numbers really look like, not the Beyoncés. I ask my parents often. I asked my aunt the other day, she's 88. I said, what family in High Point or in the Triad area do you know Black family is like historical, you know, wealthy? Not one. They can't say the Tillmans. They can't say no one in High Point, in this area that we know of, Asheboro, High Point, Trinity, Greensboro. There's no wealthy family. So that tells us a lot about what we've done with our sweat equity and what we have not received. So until we expose things on that level and show that literally Hispanics have come here from this amount of time and they have this, and we still are written from people and living like in poverty, then we got to wake up to ourselves and put that out there. And until we really show data and statistics, I don't think you get anywhere. That's just like saying the Cowboys are 6-1 this year. Well, I'm not voting for the other team. I'm voting for the Cowboys. You see what I'm saying?
America's team.
Here's
Really?
the deal. Let
I
me
just
just share
named the
something.
team. I don't know.
Okay, I'm with you. I got you.
Let me share. Courtney, points well taken. But I'm going to have to take you to the data. And the data says that there is a place for data, but there is a more heart-wrenching, touching place for stories. I'm going to tell you, you can check what I'm saying if you like.
No.
People don't buy into data, they buy into stories and then the data to support the story. So there has to be a balance of what you put out there.
But
That's the
I
first
hear you.
point. That's the first. See, and check the data. Check the data. I mean, what I'm telling you is marketing research data that says and that says stories is what people buy into. If you look at any brand, any product across the country, they tell a story in their commercials.
But do people buy into a Black story? That sounds good, but does it pertain to Blacks? Because people they're desensitized when it comes to a Black story sometimes.
It works across the board. It is consistency that causes it to work. But the other piece that causes it to work, the latest article in Forbes magazine speaks to it takes 7 seconds for a person to determine whether they're going to do business with you, whether they're going to include you in the mix, and only 1/10 of a second that it takes for them to establish your credibility. Okay. We can't put all of this on the outside, on other people. We have got to take the bull by the horns and become very cognizant of what we put out there. Let me share another statement with you from Michael Eric Dyson's book. According to him, he says that Blackness in film and television has both reinforced and interrupted racial stereotypes. And what he means by that, it's reinforced it to, yeah, we're in the mix, we're adding into the mix, but they're still providing stereotypical impressions of us.
We're
If
still
you look
giving
at how do they
shows.
depict the Black family, how do they depict Black women, they don't give a multiplicity of what Blackness is about and what Blackness is like. So we have got to frame that. We've got, Courtney, I can't say enough. We have got to change the image of Black people in the minds of Black people first and in the minds of everybody else next. because
Yeah.
we even have biases about ourselves. It's, as I say, I'm talking worldview stuff, okay? It's out there, but it can be done. It takes consistency in words, actions, deeds, and impressions to make what I'm talking about work. I may not see it in my lifetime, but if I can get anything communicated to the African-American people, we can still have our Blackness. Let me tell you something. I was the most radical Black woman walking the halls of a Fortune 50 company. But you know what I did? I impacted my people's economy by using my image and influence to bring 5 African Americans on board, 1 Syrian and 4 African Americans on board. You know what that did? That increased their earning power up to over 6 figures. I trained them as to how to act, how to walk, how to talk, how to play the game. We're gonna work within the processes, because we're gonna laugh, all smile all the way to the bank. Okay, so when you talk about economic power among African Americans, you've got to be able to use your image and your influence to bring our folks along. Use your image and your influence as a model to increase the earning power of our people. So I'm saying this is a multifaceted thing. I'm talking about the government can't do it by itself. Okay, the community can't do it by itself. Each one teach one. Each one of us are going to have to make it up in our mind and understand the importance of, because some of us don't understand it yet. I haven't had a chance to talk to everybody about it yet, but I'm planning on talking to everybody about it in my lifetime, about how to increase the economics of Blackness. And you do that by your image and influence and bringing people along to levels, to take them along to the levels where you are, to help them increase their earning power. Okay? So sometimes we are defeated before we started, because of all the negativity that's out there as it relates to this describes Blackness, that describes Blackness. We got to get in our heads on what really Blackness is and move to the next level. Blackness is legacy. Blackness is professionalism. Blackness is clear, concise, and to the point about who we are. And as I said, back full circle, we define who we are, positive or negative. And you see the negatives out there a lot. But we can change, we can flip the script on that and begin to define us as the positive folks that we are. And we can look like, act like, walk like, and talk like we deserve the best. In my training, I train people to understand that your Blackness puts you in a position that you deserve the best. And if you deserve the best, let me show you how to reach out and get the best. How you reach out and use the system. Use the systematic stuff that's happening to your advantage. You can use it to your advantage. I'm gonna tell y'all something. I've used it to my advantage. I've used it to my advantage. Continue to use it to my advantage today. Because you're gonna know that I'm at the table, and you're gonna know that I'm in the room, and you know that I'm gonna stand up for Black people. When they start talking about people of color, they ain't talking about us.
No.
When they talk about equity and when they talk about
Diversity.
minority, they're not talking about us.
No.
If it's innately Blackness, you stand up and say, this is for Black people. I sit at that table on every one of those Zoom calls on that steering committee, and I talk about what's for Black people. So many times I hear Black people standing up to me, well, and consider people of color. Man, you're talking about Latinos. If you said minority, you're talking about white women. Okay?
When
If
they
you're
say
talking
everybody
about
should
Black
get
people
paid,
and what is for Black people, stand up and say, and be pro-Black and be proud of it. See, that's where I'm coming from.
be unapologetic.
That's where I want to build this foundation of who we are and the excellence of what we bring to the table. Woo! I'm hot now, y'all. I got to drink some water.
Very passionate, very passionate. And you
One
know,
of these days, I'm gonna run for some political office. I ain't thought about which one yet. But you know what?
well,
The mediocrity in politics now, I couldn't do it because it would drive me nuts. Because I'm from an environment that is results oriented. You can't hold your job for no 20 some odd years that I held my job and not be producing. You can be in government for 20 some 30 years and you ain't producing nothing.
You
but
can
chaos.
be the gatekeeper. You can be the gatekeeper. They producing. They got the results they want.
Yeah,
And-
chaos.
And this is where we want to go, ladies and gentlemen, because now we have reparations on the table, and so there has to be action. I don't know if we should actually be in a reactionary mode, and I say that because now is the time to strategize. We've got a lot of ideas that have come out of this conversation today that are great ideas. I can't get this tax exempt card out of my head, Courtney. I love it. I think it's a great idea. And I think it speaks directly to what is owed. I mean, that's a baseline approach to, getting people financially closer to that equity, because that's a lot of money. And, we as a culture, we're still going to spend money. So the economy is not going to be hurt in any shape, form, or fashion. But I do say, how do we make that happen? And I got a question for the panel, for everyone here. What do you guys see is going to be a challenge that we have here in High Point to getting reparations? Anybody?
White people,
Money.
Oh my
white people,
goodness, we
white
can't.
people, white people.
White
Selfish,
people.
selfish, selfish. Selfish, white people. White
They
people.
gonna say
white
we can't afford it. Well, you know what? If we can't afford it, we got a plan B for that. But you know what, Rob? You said that tax exempt. I say from this call, develop a strategy. If that's something that you want, develop a strategy for that. In other words, you start with your performance, you answer your objective, you answer the question why, when, where, and how much. Everything you start out with, how, when, where, and how much. Okay, you develop it, that's your framework. When you develop that framework, you pull in your grassroots folks from this branch. We got 100 and some odd people. Okay, you start writing letters to your congressmen and your senators locally and nationally. This is a grassroots effort to make this thing right as far as what has been taken from Black people. Far too long, you've spent too much time on deciding what reparations look like. Now we're taking over the narrative and communicating
This is
to
what it's
you
gonna look like.
what reparations should look like. So this is a very good session, but yes, here's the problem. Sometimes we throw stuff out and there's a lot of people talking about doing something and ain't nobody doing nothing. So
I got one.
you can't pull these things, you can't pull them all out collectively. You got to pull this stuff out one piece at a time and strategize on that. The next thought, strategize on that, and the next and the next. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions?
I've just got one, and then Jason's got one too. One of the things we need to look at are when we talk about what our wants are. And Elma, you can throw this one around too a little bit.
What are your what? I didn't hear you.
You can put some input on this one maybe as well. Healthcare. When we speak about our demands, okay, well, yeah, because they're demands, they're not asks. These are things that we know that the city of High Point can do. Or they're partners with the individuals that they can put a little pressure on to do, okay? So it's in their wheelhouse, let me say that maybe. But insurance companies have had a direct impact on Black individuals since the beginning of the inception of slavery. So Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, these people have actual connections to slavery. And when we talk about healthcare, there's not that we want Obamacare. I don't want Medicaid. I don't want to go to a doctor that's in the hood or has a whole lot of poverty people in the lobby, just period. I want to go to a nice doctor that's well educated, an expert, if that's the case. I want to go to the best of the best. So in order to go to the best of the best, I want free healthcare. I want to be able to go to any hospital, any doctor, any dentist, any orthopedic, any orthodontist, anywhere we want to go for free with healthcare.
I spent 25 years in the healthcare industry training doctors. I trained trained doctors in some of the most prestigious institutions in the country, from the Cleveland Clinic to University of Nebraska, all over. Let me say this to you. Colorado right now, their healthcare cost is 3.7%, and I just read this, less than the overall healthcare costs for any place in the country. Okay, let me tell you why that is. They expanded Medicare, opened up the gates, and allowed the insurance companies to come in. Everybody, that's why Colorado is one of the top 10 wellness states in the country. I went around to those offices and talked to them about the grants that were being given to expand their infrastructure to accommodate. There's more healthcare centers on every corner than there are Starbucks on every corner. See, you give people the right and the opportunity to go and do proactive healthcare. That's why your population stays so healthy. That's why your cost of healthcare is 3.7% less than across the country. Let me tell you this, there is an awakening coming. The North Carolina legislature, look, Obamacare, or the federal government, I won't say Obama, the federal government gave North Carolina the funds to expand Medicaid, okay? And it was not monies that were accounted for in the deficit. This is money outside the deficit. North Carolina turned it down. Now you tell me what ethically and morally
practices. I know it affected my medical practices.
Yeah, tell me what morally and ethically would be on somebody's mind to not to want a healthy society. Well, let me tell you this. They're now considering again, because there's word out that the Biden administration is going to force North Carolina. This just happened 2 weeks ago. They're going to force North Carolina to expand Medicaid.
Yeah.
When they expand Medicaid, Courtney, we can do some of the things that you're talking about. Okay. But until they do that, because see, Medicaid is what all the government's Medicaid program is what all hospital costs are derived from.
Yes.
Okay. If you stay in the hospital, for pneumonia, you're supposed to stay in there for 7 days or 10 days. If you stay in there more than 10 days, the hospital pays for it. So that's why hospitals are trying to get people out of there as quick as they can when they go in there. Jason, I saw your hand. I'm not trying to overstep you. Hang on just a second. But I'm just saying this to Whitney. What you're saying is doable. What you're saying is palatable. And it is going to happen because the Biden administration, before the Biden administration leaves, North Carolina is going to be forced to do this. And this just happened two weeks ago. Dialogue that came out on the panel discussion they had on spectrum on healthcare for North Carolina. So keep your ears peeled. Okay, Jason, I'm backing up. I'll let you go.
Nope, y'all fine. Y'all actually went into what I was going to bring up was healthcare. So it's quite all right. I think y'all covered it well. But the only other thing I would add on the tax thing is that something that I was recently looking at, because we were having, it's funny. I was sharing with, I think it was Ken, these Reparations Saturday are kind of the basis for my conversations at work on Monday and Tuesdays. And I work with predominantly conservative white males that live in High Point and Greensboro, who are opposed to reparations, but it's still, this invokes conversation, and then I can, we all have a discussion some point in the day on Mondays and Tuesdays. But anyways, one thing that there's a real big misconception, and I had to research it, and I enjoy research, so that's what I've done, was that immigrants don't pay taxes for the first 7 years.
Yes, indeed, you're correct.
So, but it's a misconception, because immigrants do pay taxes, but what it actually is that there are treaties in place that allow no tax on people that have dual citizenship. And I would offer to the conversation that people that were enslaved were forced into citizenship here.
We should have dual
in America. So could that not be considered dual citizenship? So could there not be a treaty in place to allow for a tax exemption, not for a certain amount of time, but for an indefinite amount of time?
Mhm.
Just
Fantastic.
something to
So-
think on.
I got a question, Jason. This treaty, is it with the individuals within the country? Who is the treaty with?
The treaty is with
Country to country.
between countries,
Yeah.
and basically, essentially, let's say that I was a well, I'm European descent, so let's say I'm from Europe, and I come here for a period of time, whatever that time is. There's no limit on that time, but I earn money while I'm here. Well, I still may be here, but I don't pay tax on that money at no point, and I pay tax on nothing else because I am
Dual.
a part of that treaty and I have a dual citizenship.
So who would our treaty be with?
It would,
Federal government.
the
Yeah.
federal
Government
government.
Yeah,
initiates.
see, that's what I was
treaty.
asking. Would the
Yeah,
Right, right,
treaty,
Federal
okay.
government.
yeah, would the
Gotcha.
Treaties
treaty
take
be
place through
with our
governments.
people in the government?
Well, they did a good job. They did a good job because they named us African American. They didn't name us Americans. Jason doesn't have European American. That ain't what they call him. They call
Right.
him American. Okay.
Right.
So they call us African American. So therefore, that could be a very good legal tie back to Africa then. But just as Jason said, he's European, some kind of way. I have two African American parents, but I have 30% of European descent in me. That's very deep. So we all could say we European. We are. I could check the box biracial. We could check so many different things because we have so much within us. Sweden, Ireland, Germany, Europe. I mean, it's all, I can check off so many boxes. That says a lot about what the DNA what the roots really look like. So
Jason, that was excellent. That was excellent point. And I'm going to do a little bit more research on that because and Rob, I commit to this group to look at the initiation of that treaty. I know those treaties are negotiated by governments. Definitely, treaties are all negotiated by governments, but it's interesting. I'm going to take a further look into that. Can I take y'all to one place that I just want to share one thing with y'all before we go? Where did the term woke come from?
because what somebody said, I came to awake the sleep. I mean, I came to awake. Who was that? Malcolm X. I came to.
He said awaken. He
Yes.
used awaken.
Well, you know, nowadays
let me say this.
We say woke.
When we use the word woke, we give white America more ammunition to marginalize us by colloquial terms that we use. You know, we have become awoken by the knowledge of the psychological games they play to overtly perpetrate racism. I want y'all to be thinking about that word. That's not a word that I think is a word that does anything but perpetrates more racism, more marginalization of the colloquial terms that we come up with to describe certain things. So I want y'all to think about that a little bit.
Elma, it's interesting you said that. It's interesting you say that because my oldest son lives in Charlotte. He lives in a I guess predominantly white area in Charlotte. Used to be a black area. How we gentrified it. And he goes to this gas station. It's this little old white lady that works at the gas station. She says the craziest things. Okay. So he goes there the other day and she's like, I wish your people would just go back to sleep. I'm so tired of these woke folks. That's what she said. I'm so tired of these woke folks. I just wish y'all would go back to sleep. That's what she said.
See, we give them ammunition to use against us.
He just
We
walked
give them
out.
ammunition. And lastly, y'all, if y'all didn't see America Reckoning,
Did you watch it?
if y'all haven't seen America Reckoning, please take a look at that. That really, the bottom line of that, it really gives you a sense of the power of the black dollar. They treated us like, oh my God, it's NATCHE, Nachachi, one of those southern states, I can't remember, it was Alabama, Missouri, one of them. Same, all of them. But the bottom line is, if y'all look at that and see how many black people were killed in the struggle just because they were black, how they picked up people one night that were out like marching down the street, picked them up, round them up in a truck, took them to the prison place, stripped the people naked, made them drink laxative, didn't give them any toilet tissue, and used hoses to hose them down, and many of the people froze to death.
Listen at this. Listen at this.
Barbaric.
Listen at this.
Demonization, demon.
And they
And to see the emotional,
Elma,
the
and
emotion, the emotions of the families that are still emotionally torn because a gentleman that was a civil rights worker, they blew his car up and the son was riding down the street on the bicycle. He picked up a shoe and a part of his father's flesh was in the shoe. To this day, they even had our friend, a Good Trouble, our friend, on there talking to the family. Yeah, talking to the family before he died. It was in regard to y'all.
we don't know. We don't know.
I just sit and tears came to my eyes and my heart dropped to just understand that somebody could take a group of people, herd them up in a police truck, take them to the prison because the jails were full, strip the people down, make them drink laxative, and then didn't give them any toilet tissue and hose them down with hoses and cause some of the people to freeze to death.
I don't understand, out of all these things, horrific things that have happened to us, I don't understand why we want to please them so much to this day. Why we want to live in their neighborhoods, why we want to talk like them, dress like them. It's just infuriating. It's infuriating.
If you want to be infuriated,
want to emulate these people.
If you want to be infuriated, look at America Reckoning. And I applaud, I put it on Twitter, and I applaud all white America to take a look at that documentary. You should feel embarrassed. Because see, if you see stuff happening, and I'll leave you with this, if you still see stuff happening and you don't do anything about it, and you have benefited from it, and you are deriving wealth from it, then you're complicit in the act. You are an accessory.
You're an accessory.
And when Jason, and when those people ask you, are resistant to reparations, hold their feet to the fire and ask them, what is their definition of reparations? Let them talk to you. You got to let people talk. And why do you feel this way? A lot of people don't know why they feel this way. They just feel that way because they feel that way.
I think what I've found it comes back to is, and it's interesting because one of our city council persons spoke to it, is it goes back to having to admit that something was done wrong. And it's the problem of having to admit to the guilt and accept it for what it is what I've found. You know, and that's what it boils down to, is people, they don't want to admit that that enslaving people and the continued degradation is why they are where they are. And
they wouldn't be where they were.
Right. And I include myself in that. I'm not excluding myself. I'm saying they as part of who I'm speaking to at that time. But the reality is, like, again, I say this as a white male, that there are things that have took place in our history that are wrong. And because of those wrongs, I and others with the same skin complexion of me have benefited. I mean, and that's a reality, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be repaired in every sense that it can be. And it kind of what Courtney was saying, you know, people want to be like white people. What I don't understand is why, or what I can't understand for me, though, on the flip side of that, is why white people, especially white people, are so opposed to making something right. And especially if we really look at things, you know, white people have historically and will continue on with this same attitude. If something wrong is done to them, there is an instant need, and I'm guilty of it, but there's an instant need to make it right. And that,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
No. Well, all I would say is I feel like that same attitude and that same energy should be put into righting the wrongs and the disparaging things that have continued to be done towards Black people. And I actually have a big flag that I bought recently because I'm always at a protest or rally or some kind of an event towards social justice that speaks exactly what Elma said. And the flag is white silence is violence on one side, and on the other side, it's white science, white violence, or I'm sorry, white silence is compliance. And it's a 4x6 flag, and I'm gonna fly it as high as I can because that's what I believe.
And Courtney, you say we try to be like whites. Let me clarify that for you just a minute. It's not so much that we try to be like them, but we have been socialized that they are the standard to which people should rise, which that is not the case. And we have internalized that image. We have got to, I wrote an article on deprogramming young Black minds. See, we got to deprogram our young Black minds to the greatness of Blackness before we get to that part. So you see where I'm coming from? Yeah, you might say we try to be like, but we've got to deprogram that socialization process that has taken place, that has caused us to think and feel that
It's
way.
deeply rooted.
Yes,
It's
deeply rooted.
Yes.
And Jason, the other thing, when you talk about the folks at work, take them back to the who part of the message. Okay, you were saying something a few minutes ago. Take them to the who part of the message. When people tell you, well, it wasn't me, take them to who part of the message.
Your uncle, daddy, grandpa, mama.
The DNA of your descendants runs through your veins.
No lie.
So you got to take them back to the old landmarks. My mother used to say. See, you can say that you're not responsible, but you are in effect responsible because the DNA of your forefathers that perpetrated these actions, it still runs through your veins. So you are in effect a part of somebody. That's what you are in effect a part of the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's one more thing, Rob, and then it's yours, I promise. Just something else that I always say is that my ancestors were racist, but I guarantee my descendants won't be. So yeah, I mean, it's just, that's part of what we have to do as white people.
Jason,
we have a responsibility to make things right.
And speak up.
Exactly. It's yours, Rob.
All right. Dang, folks, that was excellent.
Rob, I love him.
I mean, I just wanted to point out, if no one knew, our brother who has some Caucasian complexion, his name is Jason Hicks. He's on the line with us, and I think he brought up a great point. And I think that speaks to what people mentioned about an apology. If we had more of our Caucasian brethren who would be able to acknowledge what Jason has just said, then that right there is the whole message of reparations. It's the haves versus the have-nots. And, for my people who have struggled and maintained, and I don't mean just, physically or financially, but mentally. I was looking at a documentary on James Baldwin, and he made a comment that he's surprised more African-American men haven't jumped off of bridges. But the bridge ain't there, but the gun is. The drugs are there. The alcoholism, the miseducation. I mean, everything, fits into that narrative that he says we're being bombarded on all sides. And so everything we've discussed here today, even if it seems like it's not, normal thinking, think about all the things that have happened that aren't normal. Just like what Elma said about rounding up a peaceful protest of marchers to freeze them to death. I mean, what kind of inhumane thought is that? And so with these reparations, these conversations, these messages, they need to get out. We need to, in my opinion, have a strategy on how that message gets received. Because Jason hit it. We got to get them to the people that are making these characterizations of us seem so fitting that we're second class citizens. And I hate that message. And, it's all too many times it's spread. So, for the group, guys, how do we do that? I
You're
mean,
doing it, Rob,
how
you're
are we
doing it.
going to do this today? How are we going to get
Rob,
reparations?
we're
Because
doing it.
I want my
doing
tax exempt card, Courtney. I want my card. I want my children to get their card.
I want my
That's
check,
going to be
Rob.
something that can help me when I get to an elder position. They'll have the means to, take their family into that next generation. It may sound like a
Elmer
joke.
said, we're doing it. We're doing it.
Rob,
Exactly.
you have created, you, Ken, Jason, Brittany, Courtney, Tony, you have created a brilliant platform. Keep doing what you're doing. If you do it long enough and loud enough, you're going to get buy-in. That's just how it works.
That's it. Consistent.
Research. All I do is market research, y'all. Research says if you do it loud enough and long enough and consistent enough, you're going to get buy-in. You may not get 100% buy-in, but if you get 40% buy-in, you call that success. And I rest my case.
That's what I'm
Hey,
talking
Rob.
about. That's what I'm talking about. And, I appreciate all of this conversation today because, again, we've brought up some great points. And these points, again, they're speaking to our reparations here in High Point. I really want to thank Ms. Harrison for coming on.
Thank you.
And I really have to say, Ms. Harrison, I am awed at, the facts you presented to us today with some of the things that we don't even know, like they're forcing North Carolina to expand Medicaid. If we understood the concept of how that works, everybody should be on Medicaid. It shouldn't be a thing where, Medicaid seems like a bad word. That's a great word. That's the kind of word that you said.
Once they expand Medicare, it opens the door for all these other entities for you to have a choice of.
There you go.
See, that
what
perpetrates you the choice for other entities for you to have, health insurance. Doesn't mean that everybody's got to be on Medicaid. It just opens the door for those who cannot afford, say they're the doctors that Courtney was talking about. But I have just thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'd love to come back at some point in time when
Please.
when we get into the throes of everything, we kind of really get into the throes of developing what this thing is going to look like. But I just say this is a brilliant platform. Keep on doing it. I encourage you to keep doing it, because the longer you do it, the louder you do it, the more consistently you do it, you're going to get traction. But I do say, always, whatever that tax exempt card, I think is a phenomenal idea. But we got to hold our politicians' feet to the fire, and we got to develop a strategy around that. And a part of that strategy is getting people, grassroots people. And you can get some white folks involved in this too, because they want, poorness is not all Black. Okay. So therefore you can get a grassroots effort and get these tax exempt cards out there, get that language out there, start knocking on doors, start writing articles, start sending letters, getting buy-in from grassroots, and then start holding your politicians' feet to the fire. Call Kathy Manning and say, this is what we want. Okay, call
Kathy.
Everybody. This is what we want, and start writing those letters to Washington and local. And that's when people will start at least sitting up and take notice to what you're talking about.
Or email. Emails work just as well.
I wonder if Kathy Manning is for reparations. That'd be a good person to have on, Rob.
Yeah, Kathy's, I did a fundraiser for her, or an information center when she was running too. But
I've been in a private setting with her at a family gathering, and I just want to know, is she really, you can come around to the Black cookouts and things, but are you, when it comes down to it, are you a Democrat that's for or not? Because that don't mean that she's for reparations and seeing the betterment of our people. That just means she may know how to smile and entertain our people a little bit. We entertain her. So let's just see, Rob, where we are with her.
And it's
Excellent.
amazing with Joe
Excellent.
Manchin. Joe Manchin's daughter was the CEO of the company that caused that high increase in the EpiPen. Y'all remember when the EpiPen was out?
Yes.
See, if the EpiPen comes under the Build Back Better Biden plan, the EpiPen will go from $1,000 a month down to $30 a month. Now, whose pocketbook does that hurt? His daughter has since left the company because she was the CEO, but she still owns stock in that company. She still owns a major portion of that company. See, one of the reasons that Joe Manchin does not, the reason that he gave for not signing Build Back the BBB is because of the Omicron variant. I don't know what the Omicron variant has to do with it. He had gave 3 very lame reasons. Why don't you just come on out and say my daughter works for the company that caused the increase in EpiPen and her stock will go down if I vote for that bill? Why don't you just come on, be real?
I got a question for you.
There's a lot of underhanded stuff going on in Washington. He is not a Democrat. He is a Republican in Democrat clothes. Yes, sir.
Well, we don't know if he's a winner for us, Elma. I'm not even saying he's a Democrat in Democrat clothes and they're Republican in Republican clothes.
It ain't but one. You know what? It ain't but one party in Washington, and it's the white party.
One bird.
It's the white party.
One bird. Flap, flap, flap. That's what I think.
Rob, what were you gonna say?
That's it. I can't top that.
Drop the mic, Rob. Drop the mic.
That's a drop the mic moment. We can't say anything else in that, guys.
It's one party.
We see what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a political system set up against us. They've got us believing we ain't got but 2 choices. We have more than 2 choices. We got third choice, which is us. The conversation about a third political party, we just developed a platform for that.
And you know what? And while we are in waiting, in the final analysis, someone said this in an article that I read the other day. In the final analysis, it boils down to voting for the lesser of the 2 evils. Don't not vote. You gotta vote. Got to vote. Fannie Lou Hamer almost died for our right to vote. Okay.
Look how the Democrats treated her.
But while we are in waiting and while we are fighting, don't forget to vote for the lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard that.
From one plantation to the next plantation. I mean,
I keep calling you Whitney because I have a friend Whitney and a sister's Courtney. They're twins. So I keep Whitney, Courtney. I keep going back and forth. But y'all, look, I'm just real down to earth. One of my clients said yesterday to me, she said, Elma, you've been a lot of places, you've done a lot of things, but you just right down here with the people. I'm right down here on the ground with the people. Because see, I may not look seasoned, I'll put it that way, but y'all, I am very seasoned. Been through it, done it, heard it, lived it. Nobody knows my story. Nobody knows the hurt. Nobody knows the degradation. You don't know my story. You look at me now and say it's all well put together, all this, that, but look, you don't know my story. At some point, I'll tell my story, okay? But I can tell you one thing. I am pro-Black. I say it loud. I'm pro-people, yes. But it's time, but now is the time for Black people to step up and show the world who they are. We can't do it half-stepping. We gotta step up and step out, and we gotta step up and step out with class. Because see, people like to do business with people who look like they're successful. Market research. Okay. You can't approach everything as the poorest person on the block.
That's true.
My mother used to say, you could not have a dime in your pocket, but if you look like you're $1 million, somebody's gonna help you.
Right.
Somebody's gonna help you earn that $1 million. See, we've got to use our image and influence to have people to buy into who we are and what we do and what we bring to the table. And people ain't buying into no mess.
So, Ms. Hairston, do you think we can get you back on and have a branding session? Because I think that'll be great information to educate.
That's what I do all the time.
I think that's a great idea.
All the time. Because we got to flip the script on this thing, y'all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You can't get people to support you if you look again, and it's in my book. Y'all need to get my book and read it. And get it from me because I don't make no money on Amazon. So I got a big order for 75 books for an association, okay? But the bottom line is, take away this, and this says everything I'm saying. You cannot have a penny in your pocket. But if you look like you own $1 million, people are going to become your champion to help you get to the next level. Okay?
Because we deal with a
That's
group
how
of
capitalism
people.
works. That's how this society works, y'all. People ain't trying to
It's all
help
about the
people
aesthetic.
ain't trying to help no poor people. I'm just being real with y'all. Ain't nobody trying to help poor people.
You know, somebody told me something this morning, and I think it might be appropriate. She said, and she was talking about young people. So I'm a presenter, you know, she was talking about the youth, but she said that current state of affairs, people think, you know, once they get a penny, that it's free. Everything you get in this country,
You
it
gonna pay
costs something.
You're gonna pay a price.
You have to pay a price. Now, it could be a small price, but you know, pennies add up to dollars. Dollars can add up to thousands and thousands to millions. So just know we're in this for the fight, ladies and gentlemen. This reparations, as we've talked about it on countless occasions, we're going to get a challenge. And the fight is coming to High Point. We are going to be fighting for our justice, what's due to us. This ain't an ask. This is not an ask. This is a demand. This is time to pay the piper. And so, you know, for everyone that joined in today, I want to thank our guest, Ms. Elma Harrison. I want to thank our panel for coming out. We had a great discussion today. Again, I want everyone, if they can, go to the High Point NAACP website at highpointnaacp.org. There is a reparations page that you can join in with the challenge. I don't want to say a fight because we're going to win. It just ain't fair, but we're going to win. But join in, give us your comments, you know, come in, join the discussion, you know, because that's where it's going to make a difference. We need to hear from you guys. Right now, the NAACP and the city of High Point, they're looking to fill positions for the commission. So if anyone is out there listening, if you are interested in joining this movement, go to, again, the website, highpointnaacp.org. They're doing some things to make sure that the commission is established and we move forward with this, guys. I want to thank our panel. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Reparations Saturday was great. And we will see you guys next Saturday. Same time, same channel.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Miss Elma.